Hello friends! In this video, I am going to teach you the easiest way to thread the Brother 1034DX Serger. I'll make sure to provide close-ups of all the really hard to see parts, and we will troubleshoot how to solve problems with the lower looper thread, which is, I think, notoriously the most challenging thread to thread. But first, we're going to start with how to set up your serger before you start threading in the first place, because that can also solve a lot of the problems that you might encounter when trying to get your serger set up in the first place and have it thread without getting tangles when you start trying to chain off and get going. So, without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is turn the serger off. Next, we're going to make sure that our needle is in the proper position to begin threading. The needles need to be in the highest position. To do that, turn your hand wheel until the notch on the physical notch on the hand wheel matches up with the notch on the side of the hand wheel. Next, you want to make sure that all of your settings are set to the standard normal setting for the serger. So up here, your tension dials, your tension wheels should all be at 4. It's highlighted as the standard setting. Your presser foot pressure should be at 2. To change that, you can spin it. This adjusts how much pressure your presser foot puts down. Your presser foot should also be in the up position. And then make sure that all of your other tension dials, like your stitch width, your stitch length, and your differential feed, are all at the highlighted settings, which is your standard setting for each of them. When you make sure that all of these settings are at their standard setting, you'll know when you start trying to serge that any issues with your threading aren't because of the settings. Finally, we're going to open this up and we're going to lower the knife blade. Lowering the knife blade makes it much easier to get your threads into the correct position at the end of each threading, and will make the entire process way easier to do. Once you have done all these things, you are ready to thread your machine. Each of the first 3 steps for the 4 spools of thread, steps 1 through 3, they're all identical, and doing them in any order doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go ahead and put all of my thread on first, and then we'll start with step 4 with the lower looper, the blue thread. And from that point forward, the ordering of the threading matters. So first we'll get everything ready in steps 1 through 3, and then we'll start working on the lower looper thread. All right, we have all of our spools on and ready to thread. Steps 1, 2, and 3 are all done. Now we can open this up and start with our lower looper thread. We're going to start from step 4, come down and put it underneath the hook at step 5. Then we're going to put it underneath these 2 hooks for steps 6 and 7. We're going to ignore this. There's no step associated with it. We're going to come up and put it over the hook for step 8. Now I'm going to hold this to the side while I get ready for step number 9. I want to get a really good close-up of this part of the threading process, because I think this thread, the lower looper thread, at this stage of threading is where most people are going to have their problems, and certainly where I kept having problems and couldn't find really good close-ups of what was going on in this area and why I was messing up. So I feel like if you have come down here, this part, you loop under here, over here, This can be a tricky section between the lower looper and the upper looper. Make sure that your lower looper thread, in this case the blue thread, goes under both of these hooks. They both have a blue dot. That's step 6 and 7. And when you come through with your upper looper thread, you're only going to go between the top one. So that's one area where people will have trouble. So when you do your green thread, the upper looper thread, make sure it's only coming under this and not under both of them. Okay, then your lower looper, your blue thread, comes up over here. Step 9 was pushing this out. I'll show what it looked like before. You push this out, and this section comes out so you can thread it. Then you need to have your blue thread go up behind this. Get some more light in there. There we go. Behind this little triangle wedge, so there's a hole. You slide it around behind here and it comes out the top here. Then it comes all the way down here. You go from the front to the back through this hole, and then this is where the user manual tells you to send the thread off this direction to the right of this bar here. And that is not correct. That will get you a tangled up mess. So there's a slightly better angle. So your thread needs to come off to the left, and where it's going to end up at the end, which is underneath that presser foot. But here's the tricky part. Before you start serging and before you move on to your next upper looper thread, you need to get this device back inside where it came from. And you'll see some people just push it in. Boop. And that is totally fine. That's not going to mess anything up. But the manual is going to tell you to do something different. And that is to turn your hand wheel until it pops into place. So I'm turning the hand wheel, poop. When you turn the hand wheel, it pops into place. Here is where the next problem is. If you have turned your hand wheel, your needles are no longer in their highest position and things aren't where they're supposed to be. So if you are like me, you would make a full turn of your hand wheel until the needles are back at their top position. But if you saw what happened there, your blue thread is now up and over here. Now, during serging, that will be its proper position at certain points. However, if it is here before you thread your upper looper, it's going to cause a tangle. And especially when you're starting to get your threads to chain off in the first place, this will mess things up. So if you did the forward spin of your hand wheel, which is totally correct, one of two correct ways to deal with this, you now need to get that thread back over to the other side of this bar before you move on to threading your upper loop or your green thread. So that is how you troubleshoot that little section there. Now let's do our green upper looper thread. After step 4, pull it all the way down the channel to step 5, behind the hook, then go between the two hooks for step 6, up over this hook for step 7, and then you're going to come over to this little bar and there's a hole at the end. Thread it from the front to the back of that little bar that goes next to the needles. Then underneath your presser foot and off to the left with your upper looper thread. Go ahead and grab your right side needle, the red thread in this video, and pull it down from step 4. We're going to come all the way over under here, then over the top and down to the right side of this little metal thing. After that, you're going to go behind this bar and then thread your right side needle. After you thread your right side needle, you're going to pull it down underneath the presser foot and off to the left with your other 2 threads. And finally, the left side needle. Pull it down through the channel with number 4, go under just this section, over the top here, and this time go to the left side of that metal notch, back behind the bar again, and through the left side needle. Once you have threaded the left side needle, you pull it underneath your presser foot and off to the left with your other threads. All right, we have all 4 threads in position. Before we do a piece of test fabric, we are going to go ahead and get the threads to chain off. So we're going to lower our presser foot. We're going to hand crank the hand wheel and watch as all of these little loops and threads work together to start chaining off. Once you see that it's going well, go ahead and close your cover, turn your machine on, and use your foot pedal to make sure that everything is running smoothly. So before we put our test fabric in, we are going to make sure your needles are at the top position again. We're going to go ahead and put our cutting blade back up. Look how smooth that was. Much better than my first video trying to do that. Close that back up and line up your fabric. Lift your presser foot, put your fabric in, lower your presser foot, and use your pedal, your foot pedal, to start serging. If you have no knots or tangles, you can finish serging this material, let your serger chain off again, and then inspect your serged edge. And after you've done all of this, if you need to change your settings for different fabric types, that's the time to change your settings, not before you thread your serger. But in this case, everything looks good. And having all those different colored threads is also really helpful for figuring out tension issues. So now if you need to know how to remove the thread, you're going to make sure your machine is off. You're going to lift your presser foot. You can open this up so you can see what happens, but you're going to take your scissors and cut right after or right before the hole at step 3. So up here we'll cut all of these threads, and now you should be able to pull all your threads free through the machine. And do it again.